biểu, các nhà khoa học cùng các thầy cô giáo. Chúng ta cùng chào mừng phiên tổng thể số 3 với bài trình bày của giáo sư Phạm Hy Đức, trưởng khoa tài chính định lượng, trường cao học kỹ sư ECE Paris về Cryptomoney and AI. Bài trình bày cung cấp một góc nhìn độc đáo và giàu tính khám phá về mối quan hệ giữa tiền mã hóa và trí tuệ nhân tạo. Hai công nghệ đang phát triển với tốc độ vượt bậc và có khả năng định hình lại cách thức vận hành của nền kinh tế toàn cầu. Phiên làm việc sẽ do giáo sư Lê Quang Thanh chủ trì. Xin trân trọng kính mời lên sân khấu giáo sư Phạm Hy Đức và giáo sư Lê Quang Thanh. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome the plenary session number 3 with the presentation of Professor Pham Hy Đức, Head of the Finance and Quantitative Engineering Department at ECE Graduate School of Engineering in Paris, on the Cryptomoney and AI, a tale of two xenomorphs. The presentation provides a unique and explanatory perspective on the relationship between cryptocurrencies and artificial intelligence, two technologies that are developing at an extraordinary pace and have the potential to reset the way the global economies operate. The session will be chaired by Professor Lê Quang Thanh. We would like to respectfully invite Professor Pham Hy Đức and Professor Lê Quang Thanh on the stage. Thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Pham, and I'm from the University of Vietnam, and it's my pleasure to share session today. And today we would like to welcome Professor Pham from so ECE Graduate School of Engineering in Paris, France. So I would like to just provide a very brief summary about the achievements that Professor Pham has achieved. So he has extensive experience from the industry and also in academia. So he now head of the finance and quantitative engineering department at ECE Graduate School of Engineering in France. And Professor PhD from Eco Pham. I hope that my French is good enough as I can recognize. So pretty huge. So the name correctly. So where his doctoral research focused on numerical solution to a family of Hamilton-Jacobi-Bellman equations. He's also a graduate of the Institute for Political Studies in Paris and served as a lecturer in economic policy for 4 years at the institute. So he also got extensive experience in the industry. So Professor Đức was the deputy vice president among the France and head of the AI project. And among the many achievements, so I can just simply cite a few here for reference. So in the 1990s, he worked as a forex trader and head of research at Swiss bank, BPCE group. So sorry for my French. Applying neural networks and successfully traded around 300 deals, $1 million against DEM, and winning 2 out of 3 times. And from 1999 to 2003, he served as the director of the PricewaterhouseCoopers Global Risk Management Solutions, offering resilient solutions and startup evaluation services. And in early 2000, Professor worked as a senior expert at Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, working group on operational risk, French Banking Commission. Then he continued to serve as a senior expert in Basel Committee on Banking Supervision working group on Operation List of French Banking Commission from 2007 on. And he served as the head of finance and quantitative engineering major at BCE, very school of engineering in Paris. So since 2010, Professor Luke has published extensively, and with about 20 double-blind review research papers, which were accepted in international frontier conferences, such as the European Association for Evolutionary Political Economy, the Economic Modern Society, the workshops on economics and heterogeneous interacting agents, the forecasting financial markets conferences, and the Computational and Financial Economic Society. He also served as the editor for many reputable issues, that's like French Financial Economic Review, and chapters in Speaker, Wiley and Sons, and Elsevier Science books. So today we are very delighted to have Professor Luc to provide the plenary talk. So please join me in welcoming Professor Luc to the floor.
Well, first of all, I wish to express my deepest thanks to the VEAM and the University of Nguyen to give me the opportunity, and special thanks to Professor Pham, who has always been more than a guide, an inspiration for me. So the title may sound a little bit cryptic to some of you who are not fans of science fiction. So you may wonder what a xenomorph is. A xenomorph is a sort of monster. And the interesting thing about this monster is that it grows inside its host. And when it grows enough, it will burst out of the chest, hence the name chestbuster, and it will kill the host. So this type of monster has many interesting features, and we will explore together. This sort of analogy will serve as well in, I will come back to that in the conclusion. Some of the characteristics, as you can see, the xenomorph is capable of inheriting traits from its host species, and we can see that Cryptomoney and artificial intelligence hosted by the environment around it, for example, the IT environment and the IT technology, has some of the characteristics of the monster that it has created. So, and it's, I quote The Tale of Two Cities because now we are living in a period where it is the best of time and it is the worst of times. And also we can see that it is the age of wisdom, and on the other hand, it is also the age of foolishness. And that is not too difficult to see when you see things like this. The inbreeding of technology and money from the tech sector, and if you can see that the growth in the United States, if you take out the part which is due to building data centers and infrastructure, it was only 0.1% in the first half of 25. losses and just very volatile markets. For comparison, every plant that is being built to host a data center and this sort of thing is around 50–60 billion dollars, whereas if you recall the crisis of 2008, it's only 60 billion. That's comparable, and we all, perhaps not all, but the older ones among us recall the catastrophes that the Lehman Brothers, which cost only 60 million, that has created. And to introduce more vividly the monster, this is a xenomorph at the moment in which it is busting the chest of its host. And you see some parallel with artificial intelligence, and you can see the parallel between this curve and the other curve, where you see that the ChatGPT is released. The jobs have gone down, whereas the capitalization of I think it was the Dow Jones went up. So very interesting thing, and you have that the age of wisdom and the age of foolishness, other things, and you might think that AI will only destroy jobs from unqualified people. And the layoff is in the middle management, 14,000 jobs. So this is and the other thing is the big, which interests us as economists and financiers and business related, is the very big amount of debts that are being contracted, and at a very high level of annual rate, like almost 7%, 20 billion, 27 billion, or 38 billion to build infrastructure, and having that at the rate of 7%, it's playing a lot of stakes on the future. And as a result, you see a lot of margin calls which make things very dangerous. So this is not a state of level business as usual cycle of investment and prosperity and development. This is playing a lot of roulette in the development of it. And of course, a lot of people have already talked about a bubble phenomenon, and Michael Berry, if you recall, that's the one who shorted the market, the real estate market in 2008, has already called on to short the stocks on Nvidia and the likes. Okay. So I'll skip this other examples of news of circulations circulating on the web to go into the topic of today, which is that the motivation that I have in the rest of the paper is to develop a tool to track the movements and shapes of the monster that lurks in the dark. Yeah, the last slide on the phenomenon of debt that is piling up, and that shows that the monster is continuing to grow in the bosom of its host, because it is contracting a lot of debt, and it's not seen by everybody because the special arrangements in finance going through SPVs, special purpose vehicles, allow those big debts to fly below the radar. So the motivation is now to find ways to explain, like in the movie, the growth of the xenomorph. Well, so here, what we are going to do is to start from static model, easy models like IS, LM, and which gives a sense of where the big values should be. And then later on, it provides a control on the level of stocks. A stock level, not stock shares, but stock as opposed to flow, because in the flows we are going to use tools like VSG. Okay? So the roadmap is like this. We are going to use ISLM on Cryptomoney in here, and we are going to use also ISLM on AI on the other side, but we are going to all the way on the same strand from ISLM, which provides a static model and values, find ways to dynamize it, that is to say, to give evolution equations, and so that we can put behavioral or adaptive equations and simulate. And as we discussed with among us, simulation is core to the activities in trading, because it allows us to explore the future with the projected values of the variables that are macroeconomic. And then we are going to go the second route afterwards. So the first xenomorph, and the crypto versus the monetary spheres, how the crypto by design, which is the emission of money, not by the a Rego function, which in the centuries before the 20th century, and not by the government, and not by the banks, like starting from the second half of the 20th century, but by anybody. Anybody can now emit, print sort of money, in particular form. It's the NFT. It's rather obvious, but anybody can emit money. So how does it go along with the monetary policies, and so, especially how can we write equations that can describe this behavior? So we start from here. This is this sort of diagram will help us see our steps in the travel, in the journey towards findings of reality. So we start with a model that is ISLM, and we will work first on a fictitious country that is called, I would call it is Zelda Land, which has characteristics easy to follow. And then anybody interested in researching and specializing in specific countries can use the model of Zelda Land and adapt the specific data of each of the real life countries. But the idea is to treat the crypto sector like another country, but inside the first country. It is to say that is with the domestic economy, the resources are used to export money flows to a part of itself where the monetary resource is changed into something that's not under the control of the former economy. So we feel that the net flow of resources into the crypto sector will depend on the GDP and negatively on the inverse on the crypto exchange rate as provided on the DEX distributed exchanges. Like if you have a lot of money, then you have excess money, then you will want to buy coins, and if the price of the coins goes higher, then you will buy less, or you will even sell coins. That's this sort of equation that's will be given here. Here, as you can see, it's a very simple core ISLM, consumption, investment, liquidity, and we suppose that the monetary mass for now is fixed, and we will see that some of the monetary mass will be taken out to export to its own core. Okay, so we view crypto sector as an absorber or a supplier if if people sell coins to get liquidity, and we see it. We can see it as a foreign country. We can use Mundell-Fleming equations. So, for example, I took the numbers from the example of a foundational book by Kendrick, who wrote in Stanford University a language which allowed to do modeling around, and the model is Holden-Taylor. And if you will, all of ISLM can be summarized in this equation, where you have the two endogenous equation variables put into vectorial form, y and r, the return rate of the economy, and which is a result of the resolution of the simple equation, where on the right hand side you have the vector which has a constant, which is the consumption coefficient plus the expense, government expense, plus the incompressible investment, and the other component is the monetary mass deflated. So if you have that, then all of ISLM goes back to this story of the two, the intersection of curves. It goes back to the resolution of the linear system of two equations and two variables. And linear, then we may just only lose the capacity to write this into matrix form, but of course it will be easy to use a solver or any kind of optimizer to solve equations, even if you have the curves that are not linear. So this is the innovation. It is the use of the model Fleming a little bit changed to accommodate a rate of exchange from the euro, the dollar, or any usual monetary currency to convert into a coin currency. And Xi will express that rate of change. Okay? So it's very analogous to the net export in the Mundell-Fleming theory. And the next step is, as you can see, every for ISLM it is completely static. The variables and the parameters are not dependent on time. Now, if we want to project and make forecast, we have to make it into dynamic equations. And the model, because a lot of values should be deflated, divided by the price, which is variable along the timeline, and the rate of return of the economy. And Poland Taylor provide a way to do this, because Hollander introduced the equations where you introduce inflation. Inflation, by definition and by design, is the change of price between one time and the next period of time. So that is how time is introduced into the static equation. Whenever you add inflation, you add a variation of price, and you add the notion of time to it. So that's we do so, and perhaps interestingly, it is also the moment where we can introduce stochastic perturbations into the equation, because we can say that the variation of GDP is not only due to a trend, which is represented by M, the slope, but also by a variational part, which follows, for example, but not necessarily, a Gaussian law of distribution. Once we do that, we see that somewhere, if we introduce it in the next period, we are out of step with the equilibrium that we have previously had, because things change. So there must be some part that is introduced in compensation to compensate for the net export of resources, monetary resources, towards the crypto sector. That is how there is the feeding of the monster, and it is by loans, because it does not take that resources directly from the economy. It is by artificial loans that can always be found. Okay? We can always mobilize the banking sector afterwards if we want to. But for now, let's keep it at this step. So once we have a an exchange rate, we will want to see what it will drive the changes in the exchange rate. And we can make assumptions like the traders on the trading floor. We can modelize by guessing what drives the exchange rate between the coin and our currency. So there are two easy ways to think of this driver, and the first one is the buy low, sell high logic of the trader, and the other, which is a form of arbitrage, it's cost of carry. And here, in this part, the equations that since the buy low, sell high introduce an elastic force that tends to drive, to pull the rate of exchange to a medium line. If it's higher, then the force will pull it lower, and if it's low, then we will buy because it's cheap. So the prices will go up. So it is a mean reverting force, and that is, in physics, it is well known. It is a force which is proportional to the second derivative, and since F is equal to m the mass times the acceleration, we have it in the equation in the form of F equal to m and times acceleration, which is the force is negatively proportional to the distance that separates the equilibrium position with the current position. So we have this equation which we can discretize because it is the second derivative is discretized into sigma psi minus 2. So because it's the second derivative, we introduce the second period before as well. And we have this, which we can do that. The interesting thing is this analogy with physics will introduce things like the monetary mass of crypto money, because the physics equation involves a mass, and we can also think that the larger the mass of crypto money that's in play, the less the same amount of transaction will be kind of a leverage, able to leverage a larger mass than a small mass. And this will be interesting if we want to modelize the behavior of the so-called wave. Yes. 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 I wrote the first time M in the general sense of mass. And yes, mu is the mass which varies with time. Yes. MT and MUT. I shouldn't. My fault. I switched notation between the two lines. Yes. I'm sorry. They are the same. Yes. So coming back, using the other equations, we see that our system, which formally has two components, as in here, the ISLM equation involves two markets, Y and R, and then since since we introduced this third market and finance by loans, we have a third component. It becomes a 3x3 equation, and the solving of this 3x3 equation is interesting in the fact that on the supposedly constant term, the constant is dependent on time because it involves the rate of exchange of the last period and the before last period. That was for the elastic force of the buy low, sell high logic of the trade. Now, on the cost of carry, fair value approach, you can approach not the mass times the acceleration, which is the force, but you can approach the speed of change as a sort of rate. The change of, if you hold a certain amount of Bitcoin, a constant amount of Bitcoin, and then your amount of Bitcoin takes on value, that change in value is equal to a sort of interest rate that somebody pays you. So that's why it's called cost of carry, and it compensates the risk premium plus a form of floating rate which is more psychological than just the risk, the objective risk premium. And in the same way, with these two set of equations, you also have a 3x3 set of equations. It's the same resolution, and in the linear form, you can write under the form of a matrix and solve it. So that we have gone through the dynamization of ISLM, and now we can use that to do simulations. The simulations, the simulations, as I said, is through the rendering the equations more stochastic, and we do it by introducing a perturbation which, for example, for the ease of treatment, is a Brownian motion. And the Brownian motion has increments that follow a Laplace-Gauss law, but not necessarily. We can use other more violent processes than the Laplace-Gauss distribution. Then, just to look that, because I want to accelerate, and there is the other side to see. So this is a few samples of the trajectories. That's interesting to see that there is in the many trajectories there are similar, even if all the time you introduce stochastic perturbations. The results mostly fall into 2 or 3 categories of curves. Well, here in blue line, you have the quantity of coins that are bought at one time. In the orange curve, you have the rate of return of the economy. The blue line, yes, the green line is the quantity of coin that's bought, and the blue line is the rate of change of the coin. Okay. And also you have the GDP on the scale that is on the right. There are 2 scales because on the one hand you have rates, and the other hand you have a stock variable, which is the GDP. So you have mostly 2 situations where here in the right you discover that there is a typical situation where you have this phenomenon like fangs for a vampire. A double dip is guide you through the other branch of the simulation, and we will have the interpretation and for the whole at the end. The second xenomorph is the interaction of artificial intelligence and the destruction of jobs. Again, I have already shown this. And so we start again on the lower left corner with another different chest buster and we start by doing a model of the host with ISLM. The different thing, because we want to study jobs, is that we are not taking like the Keynesian ISLM equation that we have used. We are using y as a Cobb-Douglas function, or solo, or whatever, but or Romer, but which involves the labor. So we have this theta, for example, in alpha, the TFP, total factor productivity coefficient. And what we are going to do basically is take a model with these equations. We have a static model, and then all of a sudden we suppose that some part, let's say 10% of the total economy, suddenly have a value of the total factor of productivity which jumps up to 4, 5, or other values. So one part is suddenly growing a lot more in productivity, and we will see what happens mechanically even with this very simple model. So here the simple equations, for example, the GDP is given by the familiar Cobb-Douglas function. Need not be Cobb-Douglas. You may have theta and not 1 minus theta, but another C, for example, another. It is not central to the discussion to have a Cobb-Douglas function. We can also introduce the idea of Romer, because there is no way we can have, like Solo, introduce an accumulation of the capital, but there is no, especially with the software and artificial intelligence, there is no amortization in the sense of a physical destruction of the depreciation of the capital, and capital should not be considered as solely the quantity of machinery and fixed capital, but also we can also take loans as capital, because nowadays it is mostly that thing that drives stocks, in the sense of stocks and shares. So we will call it a portion phi of the economy, which is going to have a jump in TFP, in total productivity, factor productivity. And at time t0, all is well, static and homogeneous economy. And at time 1, we are going to be to have a alien body growing inside the economy. And at time 1 minus epsilon, that is the moment that we will take this equation which you see here, which ensures a smooth and continuous growth from the situation before with the Cobb-Douglas function to another Cobb-Douglas function, which is split into 2. And it's a little bit tricky because it's not linear, because Cobb-Douglas is not will have a TFP, total factor productivity, which is denoted with psi, whereas the other remains alpha. And with the equations written, and we must respect the stock and flow consistency. That is the name of the game. And then afterward, we can introduce hypotheses for the growth of that sector, AI. We introduced the first derivative, the speed of change of the capital in the AI sector, which is K sub A dot. The dot represents the rate of change. Okay, and we can also suppose that the psi, yes, which is different from the capital psi that I have used for the range of change of quantity. In here, xi is the TFP of the AI sector, which can also be rendered stochastic, so that we can do simulations later on. So going a little bit faster, the number will show that if, for example, small psi jumps to 4 when alpha, the traditional sector remains at 2.5, necessarily there will be an imbalance, and that imbalance will make necessary a whole equal to, with these values, example, the toy model of 204.4 units of credits, and that amount which is needed to plug the hole and respect the stock and flow consistency will be precisely what we consider to be venture capital injected into the system. In the traditional sector, you still have, because if you want to, for the total labor force to be 5L and 1 minus 5L to add up to be equal L, and on the other part, the production and everything remains equal, you have to inject the quantity which is EC into the system. So that's how we prepare for the chest bursting number 2. With that,
yes, how you got these numbers in the previous table?
Yes, it is a toy model, and then I took the 10 numbers as in the Hendrik paper, which is a toy model. I previously quote the numbers in one of the tables. So here in the equation, again, doing like following Hall and Taylor, we surmise that pi, the inflation rate, is composed of 2 parts. One part is the expectation of inflation, and the other part is due to the gap in actual production as compared with a norm, and the y sub m, capital M here, and that part is the gap in percentage, and actually we see that in this economy, which involves artificial intelligence, in the Silicon Valley, there certainly is a set of price, of inflation, and of rate of return of the economy, which is different from the whole of the rest of the economy. So I'll skip the commercial, the advertisement for these hybrid models by going directly to the how we on this part of the chart, the lower part of the chart, we use rational expectations instead of the adaptive. You remember the part where I sort of told you about the elastic buy low sell high behavior, etc. Or before in the coin. Now for the job, I would use the SGE to drive the dynamics of the model. So the rational expectations and allow us to calculate and compress the expectations so that the SGE could be solved by the people who design the SGE expressively. On one hand, you have the equilibrium levels that are given by ISLM, and the SGE drives the increments, the formally the derivative of the logarithm of the levels. So whenever there is, because in the equations there is with inflation a comparison with the ideal level. Whenever this gap becomes greater than a certain amount, then we suppose that the stock model, which is ISLM, will readjust so that the perturbation, which is basically ESG, is nothing but a limited Taylor development. The Taylor development stays valid. So, and at that moment, you compute a new equilibrium. And that's why using these equations and using the property of rational expectation, you can reduce or the expectation of the expectation of the expectation. You can arrive at this sort of solution, analytic solution, with lambda 1 and lambda 2 being the eigenvalues of the equation, the transformation equation. I'll go back to this later on if you want. So this is how the simulation will run, and in the end, the result of the simulation on this branch, because there are adaptations any time when the gap grows larger in a threshold, you have those not smooth but bumpy curves in here. You have the nominal GDP, which is in green, the log linear of the variable of inflation in blue, the return rate of the economy is in red, and the nominal reference rate, another way of saying the interest rate of loans in dark blue. So you have a lot of, again, a lot of situations of equations and interesting times when depending on the parameter, you have situations that switch themselves, and so all of a sudden, if you are a trader, whereas just the second before or the day before, the month before, you were a buyer, you suddenly you become a seller. You have you see that it is your interest to sell now. So this is the objective of the curves and the finality of these simulations. So if you run, for example, here I ran 1,000 simulations, And the 1,000 simulation, for example, for the level of the quantity, the total quantity produced by the AI sector, which goes from 0 to 2050 inside an economy, a total economy of 6,000. Again, the number I took from a toy model in Kendrick and with Duali. If you run the simulations and you make the histograms at each period of time from 1 to 30 periods of time, you have these histograms which allow you to have this sort of mapping. And again, this is another. Here you have the crypto assets, and here you have the crypto GDP, for example, running the simulations. And using things as simple as Excel, you can do graphs like this. Yes. And for this is the framework which we run the simulation. And what is shown is that, for example, for artificial intelligence, we have the local GDP of the traditional body, the traditional body of the economy, which is decreasing in terms of jobs. However, the global, including AI, goes up. So if you are the head of state and you host a part of your economy which does AI, you would see that your economy is growing richer. But if you live in the traditional part of the sector, you will see that the quantity of jobs is dwindling and is decreasing. And that's the curve. That other curves can be launched from a flat situation on the left. You see the flat line, which evolves into those rather jaggy curves. And here, again, the straight lines, etc. So, going from that, this can be used this way can be used to regulate speeds, because as you have seen, the equations that define the speed at which the AI sector develops itself, and the speed at which the diffusion of the higher productivity goes into the traditional part of the economy. That's when the AI sector creates robots that will replace the human farmers, and you will see more productivity in the agriculture sector, but less human farmers, and etc. At what speed does that phenomenon occur? That is the speed of diffusion of AI into the other sectors. So what remains for us to do is to use tools like Bayesian regressions and that sort of thing, and adapt instead of using the toy models that I have been using to try to work it out in real economies, and also maybe use agent-based computing to where we have rather lumpy agents, actors of the economy, and not homogeneous economies. And that's about all. I think I have introduced using two different inflation rates and that sort of thing in the same economy. That shows the growth of an alien body inside a traditional body. We should treat loans as capital, and we should treat TFP is variable and diffusible in the economy, and maybe in the core, cut up the economy in a sort of succession of Leontief boxes where there is a flow of economies, sub-economies to other sub-economies which depend on it. That's all, and if we can do that, then we can feed ourselves with our own model and detach our dependence on other models, and it is our goal maybe to train our trainees, the students, to do their own models and believe on their own models, not on findings by other people in the field. That's will be my final word. Thank you very much. I hope I will stay with that.
Thank you very much Professor Pham for the insightful talk. It's an amazing thing about this talk is that he walked us through traditional models of ISLM and also the solo model and then the Roman model, but in a new landscape, right, where you have like AI and also cryptocurrency coming into play. So these are like all kind of new things and we care about, especially in our future development. Yeah, so now we would like to open for Q&A session. So we have about 10 minutes to ask questions. So if you have any questions, please raise your hands. So we have one professor Minh. Yeah. So do you have the microphone?
Thank you, Professor Pham, for your very instructive and interesting presentation. I just have a very naive question. We all know that the government use of cryptocurrency as a means of payment can weaken national monetary policy, reducing the effectiveness of, say, interest control. I'm wondering, using your framework, can we demonstrate, at least numerically, that the greater use of cryptocurrency can in fact reduce effectiveness of interest policy, monetary policy conducted by the government?
Yes, sir. There is a fast answer to that, and another more complicated answer. The quick answer is that there is a fraction, phi, of the economy which is subtracted to that part. So the usual channels, for example, using the interest rate, the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, the Fed rates, or even in other countries which do not have independence of central banks, the printing of money totally escape the governmental centralized action because people use other currency. That's obvious from the start, and we can that is measurable. But what is more complex to measure is the presence of the crypto whales. These people amass large amount of money, and now today we hear about the whales accumulating something in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Not only that's not only a few hundred million, but billions of dollars. And the interesting thing is that these people are the shakers and movers of the digital economy. It is more by these people than by the channel where this crypto money not only subtracts a part of people who don't use usual money, but that gives the power to the other people, the 1% ultra-rich people who do not have the behavior of the traditional, the Keynesian part of the economy. So that part is, I referred it very quickly by saying that we must use Asian-based models, VEAM, discretely modelize the psychology of these people. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor. I am very impressed by your presentation. I didn't understand completely after your presentation, so I can ask you some questions. It seems to me the difference, there are big difference between the first model of crypto money and the second model of AI. In the first model, you introduce the Newton force, the equation, the Newton equation, right? And then you conclude that crypto money is volatile. I think that comes from this equation.
No, the volatility comes from the stochastic part. Since the stochastic part, which is the Brownian motion, which can add to the perturbation, is amplified by the system. And the structure of the system, of the matrix, ISLM matrix, amplifies or not the perturbation.
The Newton equation introduce some volatility in the model.
Introduce what they call expected volatility. Yes, expected.
In the second model, you introduce volatility.
Yes.
Because I think that AI raise the level and the prediction become more competitive TFP by AI. Now, suppose that you in the first model, you use some amount of crypto money for education. And then you may increase also the TFP.
Oh yes, that will be a complicated situation because it involves having something that is in the middle. It's not in the first strand or the second strand. And yes, I haven't envisaged that yet. Yes.
I think that's very interesting because you have volatility because stochastic and the dynamic equation of Newton, and you have also volatility. So to combine the two factors.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
It will be more complicated to calculate
Then, for example, in these equations, you don't only have the three equations for the movement of the system from the new, not the neo, the new Keynesian, and you add, so we will have probably a matrix only with the simple equations like 5 by 5 or 6 by 6. And with the correlation, which is probably not easy to diagonalize, as in Blanchard-Kahn method for the ESG, and yes, it can give unexpected results.
So my last question will be the job. In the following sense. So you use Newton equation. So suppose that we
yes, look at it.
Cái này nó có một hướng dẫn đúng rồi.
Thank you very much. This is a very insightful keynote speech. So, because I'm not a macroeconomist, so can I ask two naive questions? Okay, so in the simulation part, so both ISLM and Holland Taylors, you appear to be drawing about the methodology of Mercado and Kendrick. And as far as I understand this, so you need to set the initial value for the simulations, right? Am I right? So for the various variables you showed in one of the slides. And my point is that because your focus is on the cryptomoney and also AI and the ideas, so in the initial value was already influenced by, to some extent, the cryptomoney. This is the so-called initial endogeneity issue. Another issue, so for the simulation, so you don't know exact sort of measurement of the cryptocurrency. So there might be a measurement issue for all the simulation. So my question is that how these kind of issues would affect your sort of results. This is the first question. Second question is about your second model of the AI. You appear to be focusing mainly on the replacement of the human labor by the AI. But so capital is also severely influenced by the AI. So, but it appears that you are modeling that part a little bit in a crude way, because it obviously in a different sectors, agriculture sector, manufacturing, and so different sectors are influenced by the AI in a very complicated way. Whereas the traditional model is not taken into account. So I just wonder if this would change the kind of way of modeling or not. Or I just wonder if it's too complicated. Or so I may have misunderstood that your model has already incorporated my point. So I wasn't sure about that one. That's the second question.
Thank you. It's very thank you for the question, because it allows me to stress on another point. To answer your second question first, no, at this point the model I presented here, my model does not incorporate that, but it allows me to say to all the students or people who do research that you shouldn't be afraid of mathematics, because mathematics should be not only a tool, but it should be for you a language, and the language expresses situations, and it is very different from physics, where mathematics is a ruler. It pushes you to obey the rules. In microeconomics, you use equations as a way of saying things. And if you can express it, if you can say it clearly, then you can write equations, and then you can modelize it and you can simulate it. So it's all the problem of introducing here, for example, the capital obeys, in my model, it obeys this equation where I say simply that the rate of change in the capital in AI follow a rule where it is some fixed parameter on the right with a law side, but if we are capable of envisaging the thing, the interaction that happens, then we can put it into the equation, and it the good thing about today's mathematics is that you don't have to too much to look for analytic solutions. You just put it in the equation, you simulate it, and you look, you learn from the output, and then you change again. I refer that as Bayesian regression, Bayesian learning, and it allows to take into account all kinds of situations. So that answers your first question. We use Bayesian methods to incorporate more and more things in your equations. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm afraid that we have to cut it short here because of time constraint. yeah. So please join me in thanking Professor Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Pham and Professor Lê Văn Thanh. So, xin cảm ơn hai giáo sư Pham và giáo sư Lê Văn Thanh. Kính thưa quý vị đại biểu, kính thưa ban tổ chức và bây giờ kính thưa quý khách, xin ban tổ chức xin trân trọng mời quý vị đại biểu nghỉ giải lao trong thời gian 5 phút mà chúng ta sẽ có tham gia tiệc ngoài trời. Sau đó thì giống như